Okay, I had this idea a while back, and it's not to really alienate us from half the internet.
Alienate.
I didn't do that on purpose, I promise! It was basically to end scary themed verses with a bang. And this was always going to be what we wanted to be a big video for this channel. Well, we decided to make it one last month, and this is the way to end it. So, to end our scary themed verses for 2013, and 2014 is going to be awesome, trust me, we are going to pit the battle of Alien against Prometheus. AJ, take it away.
It's probably worth noting that even though we have the entire box set here, I'm actually just comparing the first Alien movie to Prometheus, obviously.
It'd be way too uneven if that were the case.
Yeah, we're not doing like the whole thing versus Prometheus though.
We won't have another one of those until next year.
Yeah, because it's highly regarded that obviously this is much the quadrilogy is better than. And that's, of course, if you talk to any Alien fan, they'll probably tell you they consider the original series to be Alien, Aliens, and the director's cut of Alien 3. Because we dismissed the original cut of Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection altogether, apparently.
Apparently so.
And most people want to dismiss Prometheus, so...
We're going to tell you what we think about that.
Alright. I'm going to start with Prometheus. First off, Prometheus is one of the most visually amazing movies, at least in the past few years.
Definitely.
Like, some of these shots are just impossibly good. And they just set this tone. This, like, a lot of people give, obviously, Alien gets a lot of credit for being so slow burn. Prometheus is anything but slow burn, but what matters is it's able to still keep this, it's not necessarily a horror feel, but Prometheus always has this unsettling creepiness going on.
I agree with that.
And that is no more apparent than in the very first shot, the very first scene, which is the opening credits over these magnificent landscapes with this eerie kind of fog. And as we're panning through these landscapes, you can kind of see the shadow of a hovering ship. And then finally we get to this big-ass waterfall, where the ship is just there. And then at the top of the waterfall we have this engineer who's doing this ritual where he drinks the stuff, starts to disintegrate, and then falls into the waterfall.
Yeah.
And just breaks apart. And then we get a massive close-up of, like the DNA coming back together and, like, blood cells and all that. And it's... Like I said, the only problem with the opening is... I mean, this opening is fantastic. It's one of the best openings in, like, a very long time.
Completely agree.
And really, really sets a mood, like, really like an opening should. Like, really take notes on that. About how to open a movie. The main problem is, admittedly, what we learn in this opening 2 minutes is what the rest of the characters throughout the movie are basically trying to figure out. So it's a little, I think a lot of people have a problem with that. But I don't think about that stuff. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Unless I'm, like, looking to hate a movie, and I'm looking for stuff that's wrong with it, I'd probably point that out then. Which is how a lot of people feel about this movie, but I'll go into that later. No, it's, the first thing we should probably talk about with Prometheus is the crew. One of the things that people liked about Alien so much was the dynamic of the crew. And how they were just these people who basically just had to do it for money. But they all had this dynamic. The dynamic for Prometheus isn't there. No one on the crew is much bigger. It's got 17 people. And most of them are faceless and personalityless and nameless. Did I say nameless? No, I said faceless.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then, they come out of... we get this great scene of a very 2001-like scene Yeah, I said 2001 while reviewing Prometheus. And that's happened a lot, but you tend to get shit for it if you talk to the wrong people. We have Fassbender. Everybody's in cryosleep except for Fassbender because Fassbender is not human. He is an android, obviously. And he is basically just occupying his time watching Lawrence of Arabia and shooting basketball and riding a bike. And we don't know whether or not he's trustworthy because he starts to do really creepy things like watch their dreams while they sleep. But then they wake up and we have this scene where we're basically getting to know them. Not the dynamic that Alien had with its crew. But, and you have the one guy, the rock guy that's there because, he wants money.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people found that ridiculous that he comes 2 years away from Earth on a mission to, like, find out how we became, and he's doing it for money.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. But, you know, whatever. You're gonna, like, okay. One of the big criticisms of this movie is the script, which was co-written by Damon Lindelof. Well, here's the problem. He gets a lot of hate. He worked on World War Z, which is weird because everybody loved it and I hated it.
It's terrible.
He worked on this, but I think where all the hate from him stems is apparently people blame him for what they hated about Lost. I think a lot of people worked on Lost, but for some reason the finger always ends up in one direction. But he also works on the Abrams Star Trek movies, I think.
Yeah.
So of course, you know, with his name attached to this, everybody started to. There was so much hype around this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But we'll get to that in a second. There are, and on top of, okay, the thing that I love most about the great thing about Prometheus was I saw it in the theater when it was in 3D. And obviously you can take that with a grain of salt because when 3D is great, it's something that doesn't happen very often. When 3D is worth anything at all, is something that does not happen very often. But it really helped with how great this movie looked. Like, even when I saw the trailer in 3D, I was like, wow, this might actually be something worth seeing in 3D, and it was.
Definitely.
I was worried because when it came out on DVD, because I was like, I wonder if I'll have the same reaction. Because not only would it not be in 3D on DVD, obviously, but so much of the backlash had happened by then. Thankfully, I red boxed it before I bought it just to be safe. And I liked it just as well. It was one of the best movies of last year.
Mm.
So, comfortably. So, and last year was a pretty good year.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah, I thought it lived up to second in the reviewings, which was a big relief. Because I was really hoping I disagreed with the people that gave it backlash. So that was good. But yeah, having said that, yeah, the writing is bad, and the characters are underdeveloped. And there are some, like, one of the scenes, okay. As much as I love Charlize, and as much as I love Idris Elba, they have a scene together that is probably the worst scene of this movie. They're the only two people in the scene. And she's talking to him. And he basically, propositions sex. And she's getting ready to leave. And he says, I got a question for you. And there's a long pause. And he says, are you a robot? And then she says, meet me in my room. And later on we see that room is empty. So you know they're off banging somewhere. I don't know what the fuck that was for.
Yeah.
Except to be weird.
Very out of place.
But, you know, I guess to show, oh, they're really far away, they've been sleeping for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but... Alright. And secondly, as much as I really, really, really hate to say this, Charlize Theron is really bad in this movie. Like, she's just like... Her character's not really that... Her character doesn't really have a point. So that might have had something to do with it. she suffered the most from this underwritten problem. And then, you have, like, the rest of the crew. There's, obviously there's, I've heard so many pronunciations of her last name. I don't really know how exactly you say it. But, you have Numi, who is the original girl with the dragon tattoo, who is Shaw. And you have her, boyfriend, who is Charlie, who is Logan Marshall Green, who everybody thinks is Tom Hardy. And you have, there's one I'm forgetting. We'll get to the other guys later. I have other things for them. No, I think I tackled everybody. I think I was getting ready to say David again. Who is the android played by Fassbender. I think I already mentioned that. Mm-hmm. Yes, because I was talking about that. Okay.
Yes, you're good.
Alright.
Zombie AJ in this video.
Oh, Ford. The Scottish woman.
Yes.
It's basically what Veronica Carr was in this one without the accent. There's no accent in Alien, I mean. And so there's nothing real, like, they insert these weird pieces of dialogue, like when they talk about how Shaw can't have children. They insert that plot point into the weirdest place. There's the scene with, Wayland. Obviously, Wayland is Guy Pearce in the makeup because, they couldn't get Peter O'Toole, I guess. Peter O'Toole would have been a great Wayland.
I would totally agree.
I think he's officially retired now, though. The scene where there's this big reveal. There's two big reveals in the same scene. Number one, Wayland's alive after he supposedly was dead and did the whole hologram thing when he told him about the mission. There was really no reason for that whole thing.
No.
And then this scene ends with Vickers talking to him. And then she says, I don't remember what the line is now, but she says a line to him, and then she looks up dramatically into his eyes and says, "Father." Okay, so Wayland is the father of Vickers. This has nothing to do with anything and will not have anything to do with anything. So there's that. However, now that I've talked about that, let me defend Prometheus. Okay. Now granted, it does have those moments of Ridley Scott wasn't totally in control. Like, apparently, there's the scene where Fifield, who is Sean Harris, he comes back as like this contorted zombie. And there's this big action scene where he just starts killing faceless crew members, and it's this bloody scene where there's this big thing. Apparently that scene wasn't supposed to happen. Apparently Fox got a hold of Ridley Scott and said the movie didn't have enough action in it. So that scene was added. Which is why it might seem like it sticks out. Despite stuff like that, I have to defend Prometheus. Obviously I've said that I have loved it a few times. Let me explain why. Now, ignoring all the, the religion and creation stuff, there's all kinds of different tirades in different directions about all that.
Yeah.
The thing about this is the hype. I remember when it was 2011. I'm sure it was being hyped long before then. I remember in 2011, I wasn't sure exactly what this was. I had just seen that one still that wasn't really a picture of anything. I still can't really tell. Thinking back to what it was, I can't even put my finger on what it was, but everybody was talking about how it was going to be the best thing ever. Because it was Ridley Scott supposedly doing something like Alien. There was a lot of word that it was going to be an Alien prequel, but everybody denied it up and down, even though it did end up being an Alien prequel.
Yeah.
Or at least the start of what is to be, apparently, a supposed franchise of movies that's going to lead in that direction. Because there's so much... I wasn't really paying attention, but a lot of people complain this movie has a lot of sequel bait in it. Sure, there's a couple of things there, but I never really, sequel bait when I watched it, so... This was one of the most hyped movies in a very long time. This was like right up there with the Avengers and the Dark Knight as the gigantic geek movie everybody was waiting for.
Yep.
Because the first two have such a massive fan base, and the fact that Ridley Scott was back. The problem is that most people hate Prometheus.
Yeah.
At least that I know. It got, good reviews when it came out, but then as time progressed, and a lot of people say the more they think about it, the more they hate it. And, this could stem from a lot of things, though. Number one, it's always a bad idea to go into a movie thinking it's going to be the greatest thing ever. It's basically your own fault when you go in with the bar set this high. That's like an amateur movie-going mistake. That's just not something you do if you want to leave the theater pleased.
Yeah.
I mean, don't say, you don't have to think it's going to be the worst movie ever, but as long as you don't go in thinking it's going to be the greatest thing ever, you might actually have a good shot at being very pleased with it. And, and like I said, there are the people that probably wanted to hate it, because those people were just out there.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know what their purpose in life is, but there are people that want to hate things.
They want to hate movies, they want to hate television, books. Everything.
But that's the problem, is that most of the people that will tell you they hated Prometheus will defend themselves by saying they went into it wanting to love it. Like I said, I would blame that on them, because you don't set the bar that high, no matter what it is. Even if it's absolutely positively going to be the greatest movie ever made and you're absolutely sure of it, don't set the bar totally high.
Because there's only one way to fall, and that's down.
Yeah. And another thing is, I don't know what it is about this movie. A lot of this probably stems on the hype. So you can probably always fall back on that. Now, granted, I know this is just my opinion. I'm sure there are people who believe, without a shadow of a doubt, it is a fact that this movie sucks. There are those people.
Yes.
Just like I think. But I try to see things as neutral as possible. On camera, anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I can totally see where people would have problems, because there are a lot of problems with this movie, like inconsistencies and contradictions, and basically people setting up their own rules and then breaking them. Because there are two. Sci-fi is that one genre. Sci-fi is considered a very, very smart genre, which only can lead to two things. There is the sci-fi there are the people that say, okay, let's say sci-fi. There's a sci-fi movie that has a lot of inconsistencies in it and a lot of contradictions and breaking its own rules. There's two sides to this argument. I can see both sides. You have the one side that says, I go to movies just to be entertained. If there are these flaws and inconsistencies, I don't notice them.
Yep.
Because they're just that minuscule and I don't care.
That's the general public's consensus.
But then there are those other people that, like I said, I agree with this too. If you're going to be an ambitious sci-fi movie, maybe you should not be lazy when you're writing it and make sure you pay attention to those little details. Because you do have a massive fan base that is going to pay attention to these tiny little details and everything, and know the instant there is an inconsistency with something.
Of course.
Like I said, God bless those people for being passionate about something. But I think what the problem is this passion for how much they love something also turns into a passion for how much they hate something if it doesn't go the way they want it to.
Sure.
I think it will. Or is the way they're expecting. And I think, okay, there's a couple of scenes that come to mind. The one scene that comes to mind, if you talk to anybody, if you pick up anybody out of the world that hates Prometheus, and you just bring up Prometheus to them, and you ask them what they hated about it, I guarantee you the first thing they will bring up is Rafe Spall's death scene.
Mm-hmm.
What happens here is, and like I said, I do agree why people don't like this scene. Because Rafe Spall has played up his character. Number one, he's in a profession where he should be smarter than his character actually is. And number 2, he knows what kind of expedition he's on, but he's running away like a little bitch from everything. But then suddenly there's this little snake-like alien that comes out of the goo or whatever's there. And he's like attracted to it like it's a little pet, like a little kitten that he sees that he wants to pet. And he gets himself killed because it wraps itself around his arm and starts to squeeze and break it. And then they try to cut it off, and the acid ends up killing Fifield by spraying in his face. And then whatever it is manages to get into Raceball's suit and goes down his throat and kills him. When the whole time the character should have known better. That little scene I just described, there are people in the world that will go on tirade after tirade for a very, very long time about this one scene.
Yep.
And I think that hate is so exaggerated because they'll take something as simple as that. Okay, that was a stupid decision for that character to make. But normally when you see something that's stupid in a movie, you can point it out. Like the girl in the horror movie that investigates something without a weapon in the darkness in her underwear. You say, wow, that girl's stupid.
Yeah,
now, of course, there's so many stupid people in the horror genre. In sci-fi, characters are generally supposed to be smart. Because there's a lot of things in sci-fi you have to really dissect and really think through. Because, obviously, it's science fiction. Which means it literally, the whole thing and all the ideas and all the concepts come from the mind that's creating it. So that mind has to not fuck up when he's making this concept. Or this, make sure everything's consistent. And not break his own rules. But I was going somewhere there and I just lost it.
Well, there's a reason they call it science fiction and not science fact.
So, but yeah, there was a lot of, okay, there are these moments like where, there's a storm that they're getting caught up in, and Idris Elba tells them they need to come back inside because it's going to melt through their suits. Well, obviously, Shaw has that engineer head that she needs to get on the ship. But she drops it, and she goes back for it, and then Charlie goes after her, and they end up getting caught in the storm until David saves them. No problem with the suits whatsoever, despite the fact that Yannick said it would eat through them.
Yeah.
Okay. And the idea, and the whole fact that Fifield has a map on his wrist, and he and Milburn get lost. And that's how they end up getting killed. But, you know, okay, I can totally see it from, because this happens to a lot of, when I watch movies, a lot that are really bad. These scenes don't bother me. I know that I can acknowledge that they're not smart scenes. And they're not, the characters aren't exactly being as smart as their professions they should be to be in that profession.
Yeah, of course.
But it doesn't bother me to where I am taken out of just the amazing world this movie has in it. And just the, you know, because it's good enough and entertaining enough, and just the gore is, like, a great thing about Alien is they really don't show much gore. Prometheus likes to bring on the gore.
Yeah.
But in a good way, like, and it's like, I don't know, it adds to the, like I said, they're two totally different things, because Alien is slow burn and works on less is better, and Prometheus is not slow burn and likes the gore. They take two totally different approaches to this. I think that might have been another thing really off-putting to people, knowing it was related to Alien. No matter how much they denied it.
Yeah.
At first. But yeah, I just don't... Yeah, I can totally see where people are coming from. And I do know this movie does have people like me that will defend it and do love it. But I think the hate for it is very, very over-exaggerated. So I think over-exaggerated is a bit of a... is a little redundant, but
yeah.
You get what I mean. And the whole thing, I think this actually adds to it. A lot of people found it to be an inconsistency, but the fact that we have no idea whether or not David is trustworthy. Because, like, he'll do something helpful, like save them from the storm, but then he'll do something sinister, like look in on their dreams. And then there's his relationship with Charlie, which is a really interesting thing to follow, because there's, like, this weird rivalry that's never really explained.
Mm.
Like, Charlie has it out for him because he's an android, and David has it out for him basically because he's a dick. Like, when they come in from the storm, Charlie's, like, throwing a hissy fit because Shaw went out there. And David looks at Shaw and says, "Are you okay?" And then there's that moment where... There's kind of that moment where it's like, well, David had the courtesy to ask her if she was okay and not yell at her like Charlie did. That makes David look better. But then they had... but then there's that scene at the pool table where Charlie's giving him shit about not being human. And there's the scene where they're all putting on their suits before they go out into the planet. And then David's putting on a suit. And then Charlie says, like, "You're not even human. Why do you need a suit?" You know, this... He's being, like, he's, like, being a high school bully about it. And then David gives this, you know, basically owns him with this explanation about how, basically he has to blend in with them and act as them. Or else things will get fucked up, more or less. And then, of course, the moment where he puts the, he inevitably gets Charlie killed by putting the, whatever the goo was that he found in Charlie's drink and giving it to him. Which basically gives the, gets the DNA inside him. And then he and Shaw have an intimate evening. And then she has the alien baby inside of her. And we have that awesomely disgusting C-section scene that's really amazingly disgusting. It was like an instant classic scene.
Yeah.
And it just fucking staples itself shut. And she can just run around fine without them opening. Even though she's doled over in pain a couple of times, and the next minute she's running and jumping and all that. I guess we should bring up another thing that everybody hates is Vickers' death. Where you run straight where the thing is falling instead of the other directions. I know shit like that is stupid, but she got the death that was coming to her.
Yeah.
Isn't that what matters?
Exactly.
And finally, after a while, Shaw finally said, "Oh, maybe if I roll, I'll get away from it." But it didn't matter because it fell the other way shortly afterwards anyway. And then there's the whole Yannick deciding to commit suicide to stop the ship from going to Earth and only checking with the navigators. He doesn't... Surely there were a few more of those crew members on the ship that didn't realize they were about to be colliding with a big-ass ship and dying. I think... Yeah, I will defend this movie because... Like I said, despite those contradictions and all that, this is one of... It depends on if the movie is good enough to make me not think about that stuff. Because if I don't... When you don't like a movie, you're... Like, you can talk to anybody. Like, you can even talk to the biggest nitpickers of all nitpickers. If they are watching a movie that has a lot of inconsistencies and all that shit that they don't like, if they really like it, they're not really going to pay attention.
We'll look past it.
They'll be like me. They'll watch it, and then they will see it, and then they'll acknowledge that it's kind of ridiculous, but then they'll just keep moving and forget about it. It depends on how good the movie is as to whether or not it can shield itself from whether or not you see the flaws. Because the people that nitpick the shit out of Prometheus, I guarantee there's a million movies you can find that they love, that you can find similar nitpicks in. It really comes back to whether or not you like the movie or not. So, like I said, I am ignoring them here, but there are plenty of movies I will nitpick to death. I just happen to be lucky enough, in my opinion, to be able to overlook them in this. And I think that's what it comes down to. I talked about Prometheus by itself for half an hour.
Wow.
Alright. Now we go on to Alien, which is one of the... It's sci-fi with, like, suspense in it. But it shows up on a lot of horror lists. Not only does it show up on a lot of horror lists, it shows up really high on them. Like, Alien is considered one of the scariest movies of all time by, like, everyone. Like, every scariest movies of all time list you have, Alien is usually in, like, the top 3. Which is very interesting. Because when I said slow burn, I mean slow burn. Like, the movie is less than 2 hours. It's like an hour 55. What everybody knows is the plot is they go on the planet where they investigate the ship, the engineer ship from Prometheus.
Yes.
Where they disappointed everybody because the big grotesque thing we thought was the engineer was actually just the engineer's spacesuit. I know that bummed people out, but it's okay. I'm saying that as somebody that was never like a diehard fan of the first Alien movie. But I mean, I'm going to get to how much I like it now. So anyway, okay, so the movie's an hour and 55 minutes. And what people most know is the plot is they're investigating the planet. The facehugger gets attached to John Hurt. They take him on board. The facehugger falls off. The alien bursts out of his stomach and wreaks havoc. I was actually looking the last time I watched it. At an hour and 55 minutes, it is 36 minutes in when John Hurt gets the facehugger on his face. And it is like an hour in when it comes out of his chest. It comes out of his stomach, but they're called chest bursters. That's confusing to me. It confuses a lot of people. So yeah, the entire hour is all build up because we get to know these characters, and because there's a lot less of them too, and they all have names and recognizable personalities, and you know how they're going to react to certain things and where exactly they are in this scenario, like who's in charge and who has balls and who maybe has less balls and so on. So that time is necessary. And yet Ian Holm is just complete brilliance because he's got that. He's basically where we weren't sure whether or not David could be trusted. Ash cannot be trusted at all. There's that great moment where so there's always that moment everybody loves in horror movies where you have your main antagonist, which is usually a monster, and then you have a second antagonist that comes from out of nowhere that you're not expecting. While the alien is loose and killing things, towards the end of the movie, we see that Ash is actually involved in the company's secret agenda that the crew doesn't know about. And that agenda is to bring the perfect organism that is the alien back to the company. And it says, crew is expendable. So basically Ash is going to let them die to bring the alien back.
Yeah.
And then that leads to this insanely awesome, messy scene. Okay, let me go into this first. Another great thing about the way this movie is, like I mentioned earlier, it's less is more. Most of the deaths are off screen. And we really don't get too many glimpses of the alien. And when we do, they're either really quick or they're obscured, like in the background and blurred. But when the movie decides to show there are two big horrific scenes in the movie. Obviously, when it comes out of John Hurt's stomach, and the second one where Ash is destroyed. The scene where Ash is destroyed is so fucking disgusting and so messy, but so awesomely disturbing. Every time I see the Ash scene, I'm wishing I'm seeing the movie for the first time. Because I can only imagine. I can't even remember the first time I saw it. I mean, I vaguely remember the first time I saw it, but I don't really have much of a recollection of how I reacted to things. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine how fucking horrific that scene was to people that didn't know what was going. Because you start to see him sweating the white, and you don't know what the fuck is happening. Then he starts to malfunction. Then he starts spitting white everywhere. Then they hit him over the head, and his entire head rips off. And then there's just white everywhere. And then there's the scene where he's talking about, it's just his severed head, and he's like, his dying words are telling them that, I can't remember the exact, it's an awesome line, I can't remember it, which sucks. It's basically taunting them that they're not going to live, and he knows it. And then they take a flamethrower to him. And what's great is, the kills are, like, there's different build-ups. Like, the build-up to Rafe Spall's death is good, whether you hate that scene or not. Because it starts with it innocently wrapping itself around his arm, then that gets out of control, then the arm breaks, and then it gets into him, and the scene escalates. The death scenes, the two big death scenes in the first Alien are all build up, and then a really quick payoff that's worth it. The first one being Harry Dean Stanton going after the cat. It's this really long scene, and you don't know what's taking it so long, but they get separated because they tell him to go get it. It's one of the origins of the, oh, it was just a cat jump scare. So Harry Dean Stanton is following this cat around the hallways. Like, I think it's like a downstairs area. And he's just going into all these dark hallways just looking for the cat and calling to it, which is kind of funny. And then, you feel like it's lurking somewhere, but you don't know where. And then finally he finds the cat cowered in a corner and it's like hissing. Mm. And he's, trying to comfort the cat and saying, hey, come on, let's get out of here. And behind him, obscured indistinctly, you see the alien just kind of drop down. You see like its tail come down first, and then you see the whole massive thing, because it starts off as the little thing that comes out of John Hurt. But then Harry Dean Stanton finds the skin in the shed. So you're still looking for this little thing that's on the ground, and then you see this big-ass thing drop behind Harry Dean Stanton. It's a really great scene. And his death is gruesome. It, grabs onto his head, and there's blood, but it's only there for, a flash, and then it's gone. Then there's the second scene that everybody loves. This is, the one scene that most people talk about. When Tom Skerritt goes into the air shaft. And they're basically helping him along. They have a thing that kind of, shows when something is, there, if I remember correctly. And he's going through, and he's got this torch, and he's just... Nothing's really going on. He's just kind of going through the shafts, and there's really no sign of anything. And then they start to notice that there's something nearby. There's that beeping sound. And it's getting closer as he's progressing. And then he gets to this place. And they say, it should be right there. And he turns one way, and he looks, and there's nothing there. And then he turns to his left. And for this really quick, this whole silent build-up to all of this, and it lasts just a second, and the second is worth it. He's got the flamethrower that's now working as a torch. And he turns to the left, and it illuminates just enough, and we see the alien directly beside him. And then we see the alien reach out to him, and the scene just cuts off. And what's made worse is they can't find any trace of Harry Dean Stanton or Tom Skerritt's bodies. They're just gone. Eventually. And then of course they kind of pick off Yavaka and Veronica Cartwright rather quickly, at the very end there. And then there's that great moment where this may have been a big part of the you think it's over when it's not cliche, but it's really awesome here because it was still the start of it. It's just Ripley and the alien and the cat. So naturally, they have that, and then she can't find the alien, so she and the cat get on the escape shuttle, and they take off, and then Nostromo self-destructs. And they're in their little escape shuttle, and everything's fine. But that's when we realize that the alien has managed to somehow stow away on this. So they're now stuck in their escape shuttle with it. But of course everybody knows the ending. She manages to get it outside and blow it out into space. And then her and the cat live. Because it's always good when the animals live.
Yes.
So, Prometheus is what it is. It's this fantastic movie that's got way too much exaggerated hate going in its direction. In my opinion. Only in my opinion, of course. Mm-hmm. And the people that agree with me. Alien, though, is this... Alien started a whole thing. The whole being trapped on a spaceship with a monster thing became a genre by itself.
Yeah.
Because of this movie. And because of how effectively it was made. And how influential it was. And you just, these scenes, with Dallas in the air shaft and Brett, going through the hallways, just that tension. And the scene, particularly the scene before any of the gross stuff happens, where Ripley is like stuck with Ash. Like he keeps closing the doors and he has her trapped, and she's calling for the other people on the crew, and they're not responding. And it's like she's like, her and Ash are like the only two people like left alive, she thinks at the time. And it's just this really creepy build up. But yes, so yes, of course, I would pick Alien. But I really think maybe, I don't know. I would really like to think Prometheus would be one of those movies that gets a better reputation as time goes on. Unfortunately, you have a lot of people saying they only hate it the more they think about it, but those are people. I don't think those are people that have tried to rewatch it.
No, probably not.
Like it's been almost. It came out in June of 2012, so it's been a year and a half. So I would think that it's had enough time to settle. Where I think maybe if people. I know once you notice all those nitpicks and all those problems, that it's hard to not notice them. But if only it wasn't connected to Alien, maybe people would give it a break.
Look at it, judge it by its own merits, and not connect it to anything.
Yeah, but I guess that's the fault of the makers, because they kept saying it wasn't related to Alien when it is so incredibly related to Alien. So, yeah, everybody hates the ending too, with the gigantic facehugger on top of the engineer, and then the alien comes out. And that's the last shot of Prometheus. People fucking hate that.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, like any rational person, I would pick Alien. But because Alien is the way these movies should be made. But if you just want like a really fucking gory good time that also happens to just look fantastic, Prometheus is just fine. And like I said, was one of the best movies of its year. So I would say that's about that.
That would finally end our 2-month-long scary themed verses. You will be able to join us for more scary themed verses in October in 2014. We are going to start off with a bang, and we're going to go out on a bang as well. There's 4 really awesome ones. 3 that are known as of this moment, one of which is not guaranteed what it's going to be yet. Speaking of not guaranteed what it's going to be yet, as of next week, we get into December. December means we are doing December and January are Oscar-themed verses. So I will be able to...
Which might be better than it probably sounds boring, but there's probably many Oscar-winning or nominated movies that you really like that you don't realize.
Exactly.
You may not be thinking of. Like, you may just be thinking of, like, Ben-Hur and shit. It's not...
We're not doing Ben-Hur.
It's all different kinds.
Yeah.
Like, if you didn't say Oscar-themed, they probably wouldn't even... It probably isn't something that wouldn't even register in your head.
Most likely not. And like I said, we got 3 coming right off the top, and then we have 5 in December and 4 in January. So trust me, it's going to be a fun time, and we're going to start off with a bang, and we're going to end with a bang like we go into February, which is love theme month, obviously. And then after that, no more themes until October. So that should give you a little bit of a break. We can do whatever we want for the next... And I'm about to show you the list of everything in a few minutes. We can figure out what next week's verse is going to be. So, in the meantime, hopefully you enjoyed October and November for Scary Themed Verses. And you continue to join us for more verses every Sunday here on Pop. So, AJ, any parting words for this final Scary Themed Verses?
Yeah, make this video a drinking game and take a drink every time I said inconsistency.
Sounds good to me. I'm straight edge. I'll stick with the Kool-Aid or the Crystal Light.